Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Wake Up Missoula. I am your host, Scott Ramp, here to usher you into May 16th, 2025. Talk about everything Missoula, everything that's going on, news, city council, just some fun videos along the way. And we're going to jump right in. We have a lot of clips I'm going to be showing you for the city council report. They didn't have a city council. They had a 40-minute city council meeting. They didn't really have any kind of major through line. It was just kind of like business as usual. So I'm going to dive deep into their long committee schedule, which they started doing on Wednesday, and that was a long day. So the city council had no big items to discuss, and we had some people for public comment, but nothing is kind of overarching within the city's policy plans. Some public comments from some of the folks decrying that Johnson Street Shelter should be closed. And of course, I suggest you get a chance to look at it. Most of the city council is posted on MCAT's YouTube channel for your convenience. So as we jump in, we're going to talk about public safety and health. They're talking about the prospects of a brand new fire station number 6, if we're getting to specifics. Along with that, we have a presentation or update from the mobile crisis unit. So this is the mobile crisis team. John Petroff, the fire assistant chief, talks about the collaboration with city fire and health services on this matter, and talking further about how they're going to continue this program moving forward.
Obviously, there's an operations manager that will be hired to replace me here shortly. We have a behavioral health manager, which is Ursula, our lead EMT, who is Erica, our administrative program specialist, Christy, clinicians, our EMTs, and then our 2 case facilitators. And I just want to recognize a couple things, and Ursula's going to step in yeah, you should step in and help me here with this. We just want to acknowledge some of the stuff that our team's done as we've been in existence. A lot of our team's done a lot of extra stuff, which, you know, on our EMT side, we've had somebody go through paramedic program while they're working full time. We've had people going through and doing their masters of social work programs, bachelor's of psychology, I believe is that what Maggie's doing? We've had people go to nursing school, and so these people are not just like working full time and doing this, but they're also educating themselves on their own time to get better. They're going out there and teaching for ARI and teaching or being a part of like the ambulance service and really trying to educate themselves to provide a service to the community. And I'm going to bring.
And so, yeah, there's a lot of group and volunteer efforts to make sure this mobile crisis mental health unit is helping citizens of Missoula with basic issues. You know, Missoula trying to make it on its own as they copied a lot of the Spokane method on the mobile crisis unit and wanted to make it easier for people seeking help for themselves and their loved ones on the verge of who knows what, a mental health crisis. They still want you to call 911 so dispatch knows who to connect you to as a result. So Ursula Holloway, behavioral health manager with Partnership Health, talks about their resumes and their efforts in continuing to do this service.
They work really hard in addition to doing their normal challenging job. They earn 3,000 hours of direct patient care and then also participate in hours and hours of supervision to make sure they're on track to fulfill all the licensure requirements. We have 2 clinicians on our team who earned their mental health professional certification this year, and that just helps develop their clinical skills and decision making that helps individuals in our community. We have a number of folks on our team participating in the CIT, Crisis Intervention Team trainings, and so they're really trying to do what they can to connect with organizations and community partners to continue educating individuals on how to respond to folks who are experiencing a behavioral health crisis.
Yep. Yeah, and these are just one of those things that they created this to kind of have the ultimate problem solver, which has to do with the follow-up. So, you know, many people on the team are volunteers and interns looking to enhance their education with these services, looking to help as many people as they can, and also being able to connect these people with resources and the essential follow-up. So John Petroff also talks about folks they have helped over this period of time.
Last year, we had 989 individual unique clients that we responded to. And then of those 989, we had 333 like identified people that we did care coordination or that case that follow-up work with. I would say in those unique client ones, we have a lot of people that are in a mental health challenge often. So there are a lot of those repeat calls that we continue to like respond to and try to figure out new ideas of what we're doing. So sometimes that doesn't always go to that follow-up level. Sometimes it's, consistent crisis until we can figure out something that works for them. So
Yep. And so that's just what they're trying to do. They're trying to work with people where they're at and basically adding a crucial mental health olive branch for many of these people who, frankly, a lot of times don't have it, are not economically inclined to have those kind of services in place, especially with certain cuts to Medicaid, which is supposed to help the low to lower middle class, prereq clients, who, don't make enough money, who can get on Medicaid, and therefore, so for that kind of stuff. So let's see, where am I with my notes? I'm losing myself. Of course, they boast about these efforts because it defers a lot of hospital visits, and they say they have saved nearly $750,000 in hospital visits through these constant contacts and follow-ups as these services kind of went beyond firefighters' jobs, which is why they added this partnership health to add as the influx of people and help them where they are rather than taking them to a location for help. So if you have mental health crisis, they ask you to call 988 for the suicide hotline or 911 in cases of emergency. How we measure emergencies are different, and sometimes losing control is a path necessary for intervention, and the mobile crisis unit is there for that softer touch. They also, depend on that Medicaid reimbursement, and with that $1 million deal for 4 years, a lot of mental health services are being put into place for the city of Missoula. These folks, had trouble finding a home base last year when they spoke about this. The mobile crisis team and many of these services are being transferred towards partnership healthcare with the advantage of city services through police and fire to facilitate these unique calls. And so John also talks about the rate of calls.
And I think there has to be more backing from those level of places to be able to actually do that. I don't think the rates are good enough to actually make it make sense at this point. And PHC has done a pro forma for like a 5-year, like what it would look like if we were to staff that 24/7, and we're like half of what we need if we were to look at like the support and everything else that we would have to do. So I think we've given those numbers to the state. We're continuing to have conversations. A goal is to do 24/7 if we can figure out how to do that.
All right, so as of right now, most of the calls are within a small window of time, but when it comes down to it, the whole point of this service is to have these kind of follow-ups. The biggest shortcomings comes from the staffing hours, as they're limited with their allotted time. This is not a 24-hour service. This is a brand new service that was adapted during the pandemic, and the fire department also has major update in regards of their additional fire station. Gordy Hughes, fire chief, this is essentially his swan song in making sure that Station 6 is up and running by the time he retires. So Gordy Hughes, fire chief, spoke about their plans of building this in the Midtown.
We knew we needed a resource because of the response time from Station 3, which would have been the first engine responding to that area. We had, at some points, a 10-minute response time. And so we drove at the time, a bond to build the station. We provided the staffing through the annexation, and ultimately were successful in that, and we built Station 5. That plugged the hole. Station 5 is our least active station, but their call volume is creeping up relative.
All right, and so as you can see from this map, this giant arrow is going to this area to help mitigate the area that is in higher need for emergency calls. And the fire department they have a standard in which they have to be there within a small time frame period. And with the zone in question, from what you saw on this page, is that they say that a lot of the call volumes and the time it takes for them to get to these locations is a lot longer than it would take for any of the other zones in green. So the red zone, kind of where it's pointing to, he was saying that it takes roughly about 10 minutes as opposed to their goal of 5 to 8 minutes to get to those locations. And these are based on like the National Fire Safety Services. I don't have it on my notes right now, but essentially that's kind of what their goal was in the first place, and this is how they're moving it forward. And their biggest shortcomings we're a growing city, and frankly, the fort has that rural fire department off by Winco and Rose Hours. That is the rural fire department, which is kind of funny since the city of Missoula has been expanding like crazy, especially out into that region. But with the volume going up in some of these areas closer to Fire Station 2, we run into those splitting those services up, resulting in higher demand for fire stations. Gordy also talks about the impacts and the needs of the people. Let's see. This is what he had to say.
What we've become is reliant upon the Missoula Rural Fire Department to take call volume within the Franklin to the Fort, the Reserve Street corridor, because of their Station 1 located at South and Reserve, and we can't depend on the Missoula Rural to pick up those responses relative to city tax-paying customers.
And when you think about it like that, it's the idea that, county, rural fire department, they're supposed to be far and far-reaching. So there's a fire at Blue Mountain or Target Range. That rural fire department off of Reserve needs to get there, and then there's a fire within the city. And so not necessarily they're always on call for fires, they're on call for general emergencies, car accidents, the jaws of life, those kinds of things. Rural Fire Department has gone the distance and covered large areas of Missoula County, hence the Rural Fire Department. One of the one by Winco is rural, even though it does feel like it should be in the city. Let's see here. Oops, I totally got rid of a quote I wanted to show you guys. And I can probably move on since it kind of reiterates the shortcomings of the fire departments looking to keep up with the growth of Missoula. And with many parts of Missoula growing, the need for these services began to wane. And while Station 5 is on the lower end of calls, new neighborhoods are being built regularly, resulting in those increased calls. So Station 5 is kind of in the lower Miller Creek, Linda Vista areas, and has a fairly low call volume compared to the other fire stations. And part of that is, the whole area is being developed, new neighborhoods are being built and everything like that. And in 2020, I looked this up online, U.S. fire departments receive an average of 64.2 runs per 1,000 population. So if you add that up with all the fire stations, the department is looking to build out, and it's just a matter of where, best laid plans and when they plan on building this into a reality. Go ahead. Of course, this is just all informational and talk about the needs. And the Missoula Fire Department is in a really good setting since they passed that levy last year of the $14 million, not to mention the grants put in place to help hire 20 new firefighters to continue this for nearly the next couple of years. And, Gordy Hughes, the fire chief, has been decrying to the city of Missoula that we've needed a whole brand new fire station since he kind of started for almost 20 years. He's basically been asking the city, we need to figure out a way to move forward with the fire station. There was some back and forth during a meeting between city council member as asking, being like, oh, we should really think ahead and just, shoot the moon and just have an overstaffed, fire department because we're thinking about projecting ahead. And Gordy's basically being like, we got to play catch up. We can't really plan something big if we can't even keep up with our current demands. So that was one of the things that was kind of going back and forth through that particular meeting. But I just wanted to give you a glimpse of that meeting as I move on to the climate conservations and parks, where they're talking about the Parks and Rec master plan for the next 15 years, otherwise known as PROST. Zach Covington from Parks and Open Space Planning and Development talks about the long-range plans for this.
Plan recommendations, since it's a 15-year plan, it's a very comprehensive, high-level plan. And so a lot of the recommendations are generalized a little bit and provide a lot of flexibility, because a lot of what we do is opportunistic. A lot of what we do is based on public needs. For example, when we do our park design processes, we literally go to the local neighborhoods and we do design charrettes and processes to make sure those neighborhood parks are meeting the needs of the local neighborhood and the community.
And, you know, this is like a long-range plan. You know, the city of Missoula is growing. Right now, there's that demand for more housing, and Parks and Rec are not really being thought of in terms of this constant grow inward, you know, this basically 20-year plan for the city of Missoula, which they're trying to initiate the last couple of years, because we're, you know, resulting from the pandemic, not to mention the trends in population growth. They expect to be anywhere between 15 to 20,000 new people within the next 20 years. So we need the space to be able to actually grow to meet those demands. You know, through the power of PROST, otherwise known as Park, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails, they have plans, but a very limited budget, and rely on grants and open space dollars to help bolster their green space in Missoula. We're in high housing demand and urban forest issues in regards of aging out. So urban forest is one of those big things too that they're really worried about, is they have certain amounts of money to help mitigate and a lot of those aging trees that are in the university district, because they've been talking about this for the 15, 20 years, that the trees that are there have already aged past the point of their lifespan. Because, you know, these are short-lived trees. Most of them live, you know, 60, 80 years, and they were planted in the 60s. So do the math. Zach also talks about basically the lack of access to natural areas as opposed to just general parks. And so this is what he had to say about that.
There's large areas in Missoula that don't have access to nature, particularly in our more urban areas and neighborhoods. A lot of our more historic neighborhoods, and I'm thinking more of like Franklin of the Fort, some of the north side, west side, and also North Reserve in particular. That area is pretty underserved with parkland and access to nature. And so we talked a lot about this concept of hybrid parks and bringing more nature into developed parks, you know, more traditional developed parks, and also bringing a little bit more highly developed access points or trailheads or amenities in some of our natural areas that are closer to the community or higher intensity use. And so the plan talks a lot about that fluctuation or the flexibility between the more developed parks and natural areas, and finding something in between that a lot of people may need.
All right. So that was Zach Covington talking a little bit more about that, just trying to meet the needs of those kinds of things. And so they plan to adopt these plans by the end of June, with a June 23rd hearing on this. PROST is a great example of Parks and Rec's master plan as the city grows in their efforts to improve the green space. Now moving on, Housing Redevelopment and Community Programs brings up the Johnson Street Shelter's Housing Sprint update and the general homelessness plans for the city of Missoula moving forward. So we're going to talk about the city and how they're going to move forward with this with community member Sam Hilliard, Coordinated Entry System, gave presentation on this particular matter.
This strategy is to make houselessness in Missoula rare, brief, and non-recurring. There are several ways in which that will be actualized and tracked, and we'll tell you a little bit more about that throughout this process. But I think by and far, feedback that we heard both from service providers, both from people experiencing homelessness, anybody who had something to say is that people do not want folks in Missoula experiencing homelessness. The method.
All right, and so yeah, that was the start of this particular meeting as they dive deeper into this. As the mayor claimed last week, the numbers of homelessness are below pre-pandemic levels for housing. And with the closure of the Johnson Street Shelter, these are the programs in place to help folks navigate the system. Cindy Goodman continued talking about their efforts as Johnson Street Shelter closes.
As Missoula community members, we know that besides, the current closure of the shelter that we are looking to have happen in the future soon, we have people who are on the sides of the streets, people who are adult children living at home, people who can't afford to make ends meet, people who are just, one catastrophe away from being homeless. It's a pretty big issue. So we're going to measure our effectiveness as we're going through our strategy rollout by the reduction of overall houselessness. That will be done through the coordinated entry system, for one, through the point in time that happens, I think, in January, to discuss people who are experiencing houseless that are captured and that identify as houseless, which doesn't cover the real spectrum of number of people that are experiencing this trouble in our community.
So in many ways, what they're trying to do is figure out data collecting, data strategy. It is a lot of the same. It really is. It seems like the city wanted to put this in place on a case-by-case scenario to see what strategies help the best. Clint Little Frazier, part of this coalition as well, talks about how this is kind of work out as they put into plans.
We want coalition members, we want people with lived experience of houselessness, local government, city staff, providers of housing services and housing resources, housing developers and landlords, healthcare and behavioral health, faith communities and community groups, businesses, and all Missoula community members for it. So our strategy specifically calls out city staff to provide staffing support, resources, data, and administrative support, but all parts of the Missoula community have a role to play in responding to houselessness and the situations that create it.
All right. So more jobs, more creation of people trying to figure out this problem. And those listed are important organizations that, wait, hold on. Did I skip ahead? No, I did not. Many the provided resources for folks on the fence simply trying to get into housing and avoid eviction. It bears repeating, as the centralized housing solution has a fund that goes towards many people looking for money towards housing, from rent deposits to paying late fees because of money troubles. Emily Armstrong, homeless programs manager, talks about this plan and how they're going to start implementing it.
The community need to figure out how to better support our service providers on the ground as a community, whether that's through partnerships with the faith community or robust volunteer networks, whatever that may be, to really bolster our organizations who are doing the bulk of the work and carrying a lot of the weight emotionally and physically and in all of the ways. So again, we don't have specifics as far as strategies or really actions to impact turnover, but the strategy names that figuring that out is an important component of establishing increased capacity within our service provider realm.
All right. So, yeah, they're just trying to do what they can for what they have, honestly. Let's see, where was I? As we jump right in, we talk about the importance of this plan, and Sam Hillard, with the three presenters on this, talk about the importance of having this plan in place.
In the past, what that might have looked like was one single organization taking the onus onto themselves and being like, we're going to figure this out, at least for our people. Or what often would happen prior to coordinated entry system was, we found a property management company that's really great, but we're not going to share that with anybody else because we want to make sure that our people get that resource. And so it really is level setting across the entire community. And my word to folks who think that coordinated entry is useless would be to get more curious and plug themselves in more, because I would not be doing this work for 11 years of my life if I didn't believe in the service providers in this community and our ability to impact change. And I see it every day, and it's small things, right? So I think if people are getting mad about coordinated entry system and the services or resources that it is or isn't providing, take that to the polls, y'all, because that is directly related to the amount of funding that we are given from the state and from the feds.
My only suggestion is the ability to give citizens of Missoula the power to essentially point people in the right direction, because I've been asked so many different questions about being able to help certain levels of homeless people, and it's like I don't even know half of the programs that they could use to help with their situation. A lot of times you defer them to the Poverello Center, and and a lot of times when I mention that to a couple of these folks I've met along the way, is that they just outright reject Poverello Center as a whole, and it's like, I don't know what else to tell you. That's where people go when they're homeless. It's like that's the place. They have services there. What do you want? Well, what do you expect? I don't know. It is very weird to be in those kind of situations where you have somebody who is homeless and these kind of dire situations asking a complete stranger for help. We want to make sure that the strangers, the random people in Missoula, have the kind of knowledge and information they need to point these people in the right direction. Otherwise, we're going to be in this constant feedback loop of being like, what do we do? How do we help them? We can't directly help them. We have these services in place to help them. but yeah, it is really, really hard, especially on, just, like you're working at a restaurant or a store, somebody walks up to you and they just kind of give you their whole life story. I'm just like, you didn't even tell me your name, or you don't even ask for my name. It's just like you just kind of vented to me and that's it. And then they walk away and that's it. And that's a couple of the conversations I've had with homeless folks, is that you hear their impassioned stories, but you don't hear anything else, which is kind of kooky. And I don't mean to kind of go off on this rant, but this is kind of what I've experienced through homelessness in Missoula. It's like, there's not many people. It's like, what do we need to seek to solve this problem? What is going on with this? Like, are they not, there's services there, are they not using it, or what's, yeah. And so as we get further into this, we're talking about the housing sprint. While the Johnson Street shelter is closing, they're trying to figure out exactly how they're going to house a lot of these people or get the services to them before it closes by the end of August. So Emily Armstrong talks about their current efforts in housing the clients of Johnson Street shelter.
12 to 2 and Wednesday from 5 to 7 at the shelter itself. And our team has staff there alongside staff from other community agencies and volunteers from the Housing Advocate Network that are on site having navigation and housing problem solving conversations with folks. I apologize in advance for the fast speaking. I'm trying to condense a lot into a very short period of time. We have so far met with 129 unique individuals during those office hours who are seeking support through the housing sprint and working on next steps for themselves. Many of those individuals continue to return multiple times for ongoing conversations about navigation. And in that vein, we've had 257 housing problem solving conversations just at those events. It's become clear that these sessions are really filling a gap in our community for case management. It's a gap that we've long known existed since the state made some pretty significant case management cuts in 2017. And so this is really serving as light touch case management, and it's happening in real time, which I think speaks to why so many folks are attending and why so many conversations are happening.
All right, and so that's kind of what they're doing right now, is they're doing those regular meetups Mondays and Wednesdays, building a tracking system to help touch base with clients. Let's see, where am I? With clients and being able to be informed before meeting their clients and avoid repeating information. The biggest hurdle to get the proper document is the proper documentation of, ID, identification, which, 15 out of the 95 clients were able to attain their ID. And part of having an ID is proof of your existence. According to legal systems, liabilities, when you're getting a job, you need an ID, you need proof of ID, you need secondary confirmation of ID. There's a lot of work being put into place to get it, which, now that I'm kind of talking off the cuff, it's like, it wouldn't be almost impossible for illegal immigrants to get a job because they need the proper documentations to even get those jobs in the first place. Just saying. But also, Emily talks about, the people a little bit further about their efforts and what they're going to do.
81 people have identified a source of health insurance. So that's 83% of the folks we're interacting with, which again is another kind of supportive factor to being able to secure a positive solution and find stability. 50 people have no income. But of those, 29 would like help finding employment and 17 would like help with a Social Security application. Many folks identified, 80 people identified what we call housing strengths. These are things like being able to reliably pay rent, having a long history of being successfully housed, keeping a clean home, being a good neighbor, being handy and having an interest in helping maintain their unit and invest in that maintenance. So those strengths are a really critical component and something we talk a lot about when we're helping folks figure out what their solution is.
Yep, so there's a lot of nuance, a lot of things going on there, and just having a gap in your living and your work history is kind of detrimental to a lot of people's efforts into getting housed in the first place. She said that many clients at Johnson have been engaged with these regular weekly meetings to work with staff, and this all hands on deck has been a great success in measuring the outcomes. But of course, good news, but time and money isn't always on the people's side, as they got to get busy before August ends. This and the HERO house at the former Clark Fork Motel will be able to expand homeless veterans. Well, we talk about veteran homelessness in our community is roughly 0 to 1 new homeless person per month, with a 40% reduction on overall homelessness in veterans. So there's a lot of programs in place to help bolster and help veterans. So there's some success on that part of things. But as we get further into the committee meetings, we're going to throw it over to Budget and Finance as they go into the tourism district. So this is something that many people don't really think about, or you have no reason to care about it, but this is like taxes on tourists that come to the city of Missoula, whether it's a hotel stay or whether it's a restaurant fees. But essentially, the tourism district was put into place to help bolster tourism. So tourism's pay for more tourism, and there's roughly a bunch of other places in Montana that opts into this tourism district to tax the tourists. And so they're talking about, so the director of Destination Missoula, Barb Nelson, talks about doubling the hotel stays from $2 to $4.
Request today is that we are asking the City Council to raise the Tourism Business Improvement District assessment from $2 to $4. And a little bit of a history behind the TBID for those of you who may not have been here through the whole thing. It's been a process. So the TBID was established by the council in October of 2010, and at that time it encompassed 10 hotels in Missoula, and it was $1 per occupied room night for those hotels alone. The assessment was increased in 2013 from $1 to $2. And then we came back to the City Council in 2019, and we renewed the Tourism Business Improvement District for an additional 10 years. But at the same time, we expanded the boundaries of the TBID to encompass the incorporated city limits. So now it encompasses all of the hotels within the city limits of Missoula.
So they've really grown in the last couple of years, and with a lot of the money that gets generated through these tourism business improvement districts, you know, the whole idea is that tourism has bolstered up, the economy has increased, and, you know, with the additional fees with that, the hotel stays and everything like that, we've been able to generate $76 million through hotel stays alone. This also, you know, this isn't just the fee, just mind you, but overall through tourism and, you know, through the efforts, they wanted to pat themselves on the back and essentially say that they generate $489 million through tourism alone, not counting the fees associated with all that money from commerce. Barbara also talks about the cost of running these operations and talks a little bit further about how the sausage is made.
A lot of increase in our hotel rooms in the last few years. The last 3 years, we've stayed pretty stagnant. We've had some new hotels come in, but as those hotels come in, some of the older hotels that are not in really good shape have dropped off. And so it's stayed pretty even and pretty stagnant. Unfortunately, the cost of our operations have not done that in the last 3 years. They've gone up significantly for things like paper and printing and digital ad placement and trade shows, you know, our travel expenses, personnel expenses, all of those things have really gone up.
And when you work for a tourism board, you have to travel. You have to go to these locations, and you have to help basically local communities. The part of these tourism business districts isn't just about Missoula, Billings, Bozeman, because this is a collective effort of many of these major urban metropolitan areas to help bolster tourism not only in their cities, but also in the smaller outskirt towns or even part of the towns in the state of Montana that would not necessarily get those kind of tourism dollars in here. Heck, just thinking about it, Fort Belknap, you know, they have a theater up there that, Fort Peck Theater is so much bigger now because of a lot of these tourism monies going in to help promote a lot of these things that, you know, the town is so small, and a lot of times it would be just mostly like a flyover town, but without a lot of these kind of efforts being put in place, it wouldn't be as robust as it is today. I remember going to a play there, and it's like, it wasn't much of anything, but now it's like kind of insane how people just go to Fort Peck Summer Theater, and you got some people who, you know, act in those plays who also act in bigger cities like Phoenix, Arizona. So it's definitely one of those kind of robust communities to kind of like come out of tourism. And, that's just kind of how Montana is that, we've heavily relied on tourism as most of our industrial mining operations have kind of sunset over the last 20 years, and industry has kind of left Montana. And so we've been kind of stuck in this weird feedback loop of, okay, we need to help generate some revenue here, so I guess we'll just stick with our tourism part. So, we still have a lot of native and natural environment that we really look forward to. And, and Barb also talks about the influx of people and how to encourage tourism outside of these peak summer seasons. And this is what she had to say.
Is that we're looking at trying to increase year-round demand. And the year-round part is extremely important because even when we have really great summers where everybody's concerned about, oh my gosh, we've got all of these people in town, and you're looking at 80% and 90% occupancy rates. What you're looking at in the wintertime when things drop off is you're looking in the 40% ranges. And it's really hard to keep a business open when you're in the 40% ranges. So we're looking at how do we even that out year-round. So we're
all right. So, yep. I mean, it's a strategy. That's my last quote for my city council report. And, it's just one of those things, with tourism districts, these go on to help manage demand and create demand for local businesses. You got to tax tourists to get more tourists, but of course, better tax them than us, in my personal opinion. But I think that's kind of true with a lot of people, is like if we increase those kind of fees for, people just passing through. And one of the arguments for having these kind of special taxes for tourism is if Montana becomes those kind of destination spots, you have a lot of people who come to Montana using these resources that the taxpayers pay for. You can't call 911, and it's not a pay-to-play system. Everyone has equal response for the police department. So when you have influx of anywhere between 3.5 to 4 million people just passing through Missoula, at least one of them is going to call 911. You can guarantee that. So up next, we have some videos for you guys from the songs from Mountains and Valleys, which changed the name to Missoula Music. So if you're ever interested in finding all these fun videos, you can go to Missoula Music on the YouTube page, and you can find all sorts of fun original content. I think we have nearly 800 individual music performances from Missoula and MCAT, not to be associated with Dylan Albin's programs. And so this is Our Voices, The State of Us by Maddie Specs.
I've been getting increasingly more uncomfortable since the day I turned 11. Still, thank God I don't believe in heaven. I know that's an oxymoron, but it's more of a joke. I breathe in deep and let you grab me by the throat. See, this weight is pulling me under. So why can't I just lay under my covers? Why do I feel like I can't lean on my brothers? Why can I only fix my brain with never-ending meds? Why does it feel like my stomach's filled to the brim with lead? It took me 27 years to figure out what's wrong, and now it has a name, this never-ending black fog. It feels weird when I say it. It makes me feel crazy. It feels weird to try to fix it. Does that make me crazy? See, there's a mark of disgrace associated with my brain chemistry. We call that a stigma. Why can't we call an assembly? But I guess we'll just wait for me to kill myself. Do an autopsy and blame it on anybody else but society. Yeah, this is all our faults. We put a magnifying glass up to all our faults. Waist is too wide, lass is too short, clothes too cheap. I don't deserve your support. So who is it really we should be taking to court? The 1% for never letting go of a cent? The pharmaceutical companies that make sure we stay bent? Or is it us as a whole that fell so easy into that role where it's normal to see a cop on patrol taking anyone's soul, then going home to eat his damn casserole. I mean, we say how sad and just continue to scroll, because we can't stop the people with all the control, because we're just the fish and they own the bowl. And instead of feeding us so that we can thrive, they throw in guns and say, I hope you survive. And yeah, that includes you. I know you're only 5, but come on, it's fine. Learn to run, duck, and dive. We'll have the news there, and while they're live, they say how lucky we were that only 4 died. It was just one guy. He was an individual. So don't make a judgment of all white people. Generalizations are for other races. That's why we get lowered sentences in all our cases. Man, I can't stand to see all these faces. The faces of the moms that lost their sons, they put their hands up, no, they didn't have a gun. The faces that look in the mirror and hate what they see, I don't think that reflection could ever set them free. The faces of the over and under medicated, you miss your anniversary, here's a happy belated. The faces in the magazine that aren't even real, yet have so much control over how they all feel. The faces of the rapists that never went to jail, even if they admit it, they're still protected by that white veil. So whatever, fine, I guess I'll go to class and look at that flag in the corner and wonder exactly what it stands for. Because if that flag is art, it's not imitating life. It could be beautiful, but we just cut it with a knife. We separate ourselves from our neighbors, not the least bit shameful of all our behaviors. So for now, this is how I must pledge, until we decide to step away from that ledge. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of Ignorance and to the hatred for which it stands, one nation, under money, divisible with control of an injustice for all.
We are back. Let's talk about some movies that are coming out this weekend. It's time for Pre-Critic, where I prejudge a movie based on absolutely nothing but my biases towards movies. Kicking things off is the Final Destination movie, Bloodlines. This is probably the 6th or 7th movie in the franchise. So what essentially happens in this movie is that people who were supposed to die 50 years ago, death kind of like took their time and procrastinated a little bit more. Sounds pretty familiar in these modern times because, you know, it seems like procrastination's not anything new, but death is now finally going after this family who should have died with their parents at a young age, but they decided to get old and have a whole bunch of kids and grandkids who are now on death's door just basically by being born. You know, Final Destination, the fate that cannot be changed, even if a baby is born too soon to be deceased. Enjoy this terminally ill franchise as they try to cope with the past failures and take the movie Scream approach, which kind of like over-explains the plot and franchise into multiple movies. So they try to do a Marvel Cinematic Universe, but with horror movies. Hurry Up Tomorrow, from a musician who is struggling, meets a stranger that challenges their normal conventions, and the person becomes a better person in the end. This follows a guy who, like most musicians, will learn how he'll have to think about his whole life before he performs his next big deal with the writer's block. You know, like most stories, you got to get out of your comfort zones. This is one that stars the Reza Fahim, who you might know as the Weekend guy, who does those Daft Punks on the reg to take the role of a Lifetime, a cinnamon roll. All right, then we have Magic Farm. I assume the farm and it's magic, but however, this movie is more like a enduring spirit of an eclectic cast of people who are kind of stuck in the town that they weren't meant to be in, but essentially they were sent out to, they're basically a film crew. They were sent on location, but they were sent to the wrong location, and they basically run out of money and they're kind of stuck in that town. So imagine you're a camera crew, and then you become essentially homeless with a bunch of your camera equipment and such, and then you just make the best of it. So I assume this movie is tailor-made about a cast of characters embracing their circumstances and learn to become better people along the way. Then we got a whole bunch of movies that are coming out that don't really seem like they're real movies. So this next one, it seems like it's a real movie, but when you actually look into it, it's like, wait, isn't this just a grift? We all know Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but we don't know where the trailer is for this movie, and it seems to be like a Ken Burn documentary feel with the comic book strips with voice acting. I'm not entirely sure if this is an actual movie that's coming out this weekend, but I saw it on the release calendar. The Loot, super low budget movie with a bunch of old high school kids getting enough money to turn on each other. This one is less about going on an adventure to get the loot, but more about keeping the loot and turning on each other. So it's just after the fact they find their treasure. So it's like the sequel to Goonies, where they become gold madness and they start attacking each other. Then we got The Crypto Beyond. So I don't know what this kind of is. This is probably just another one of those documentaries about the dangers of crypto and everything associated with it. Then we got July 7th, who killed the president of Haiti? Probably the CIA, but who really cares as they make fun of a fun movie about a tragedy that simply will make a cloak and dagger film about an investigative college student on a journey through post-assassination Haiti. I hope Barbecue makes an appearance. He's that Jimmy Xavier as the guy who's kind of like a former police chief who united the gangs against the country's government. I heard he just was caught last March in Shantytown, as it was called. It's actually called Shantytown. So, there's some interesting things happening there, but they're essentially making a Hollywood movie based on real life events. And so, yeah, that's what's happening there. There's the movies that are coming up this weekend. I have a brand new Dublin stuff for you guys, and this is from the 1951 movie, The Hoodlum.
Walk on the green staircase. Please stop. Walk on the green staircase. Yeah, we like to have fun here in the prison. Yeah, I can tell. Wow, so you're saying I get all this just for the $1 I spent on the auction? Yeah, but the electricity bill and the property taxes are out of control. Hey, you want to see something really cool? Right behind this door is the best seat in the house. It sends you right to heaven. You want to see? Sure. This is the skeleton key. Don't worry, it's not as scary as it sounds. It just opens all the doors to this prison. Oh yeah, don't worry about the sound. A gallon of WD-40 will handle everything. All right. What's so funny? Isn't that great? Don't worry, I do that joke with everyone who looks at this prison. It's old Sparky there. Took much of the state's electricity just to use. Huh. I think I've seen just about enough. Well, Mother, you had to watch your son with this new prison he bought.
Oh, it's my favorite son.
Mom, I'm right here.
Yeah.
Mom, bro, what are you doing here?
So how was the tour, hon? I can just imagine having a full immersed Airbnb in this place. It's so wonderful.
I mean, I only bought it for like $1. Looks like you done got yourself a prison. In this family, it's our prison. Wow, somebody watched Fast and Furious. You think the liability on this building's going to be worth the profit?
Oh, don't talk down to your brother.
Yes, Mother.
Oh, to think your poor father bought a whole gas station and now you are buying a whole prison. I'm so proud of you.
Wow, look how happy he is.
Oh, you'll have the same smile on your face when you hit prisoners with corporal punishment.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to use the prison for prisoners.
Oh, so you think you're too good to be a warden? Or an owner of a prison? Let's not get carried away so soon.
Mother, I just don't think...
You're just like your father. He doesn't really think about the things he does. He didn't think he was going to die from that car explosion.
Well, didn't he say he was invincible and walked into the fire?
He was a very prideful man.
Is that what you call it? All right.
Well, he was smart in other areas of our marriage.
Ew, Mom, can we not talk about that?
Oh, you don't like to hear about your mother getting it on with your father? Your father really liked gas, and I'm not just talking about the gas station.
Did you fart on Dad?
No more than normal. It was a trend of the time. You get it, don't you? It was just us doing our thing, free love, all that crap. Maybe if you found a nice lady, maybe she could do all sorts of wonderful things for you. I don't know if you're...
All right, you've gone too far, Mother. I don't know about you, but that electric chair is looking better and better every day. I have dreams for that prison, Mother. And that means dialing people and asking if they want to buy some crap from me. That's how I see it in the future. A new way of telemarketing.
All right, we are back. Let's talk about some things that are happening in the news and around the city of Missoula and beyond. I didn't get a chance to do the news wrap up last Friday, but, because a couple big things happened with the Pope being American from Chicago and everything like that, not to mention the Indian-Pakistan conflict that would have like gotten real bad with the two major nuclear powered countries basically having a ceasefire and resolved within the same week that it kind of started. And with plenty of hard feelings, but not enough to continue the fight, which would be unfortunately heavy in favor of India. But since both ones have a nuclear power, they have that major deterrent. So this is kind of proving that, you know, there's some poking and prodding with the nuclear war, but there's not a lot of people going to keep moving forward on that, which, you know, it's not kind of like the best scenario, but it is kind of one of those kind of weird scenarios. But however, as we move on from this, we have also news regarding the Real ID. We got some pushback from the Director of Homeland Security, Christine Noem, who also has come under fire recently for with the Garcia case of the guy who was illegally sent to El Salvador without any due process. The new policy is essentially a brand new line in a way of entry to fly, but overall seems to be leading towards not necessarily to fly at this time. Montana has been one of those holdout states for many decades as legislation was introduced in roughly 2005, 2006 after the result of the 9/11 attacks. Regardless, the appointments for the Real ID have gone up in Montana, with some places needing 6 to 7 days to meet with folks. Luckily, you know, there's I'll get my ID for the summer as it kind of lines up with my 8-year re-up for my ID. So, you know, it's, you know, the whole idea with this is that, you know, there's a lot of different places people can go to. You have your general DMV, which is government regulated, and there's Montana Vehicle District, which is MVD, which is another good resource for a lot of people looking to get streamlined process to get their ID. It is basically right next to the Dollar Tree, and probably one of the fastest ways of doing it, because last time I was there were 2 people not just kind of waiting around to help people. So, you know, I think it's a little bit more expensive because it's the creation of a middleman for the DMV. Otherwise, you'd have to go to the DMV, which, you know, I'm not going to go to personally. Okay. So also, a news item I wanted to talk about last week was MCPS passed the 2 out of 3 levies last week. They rejected the $1 million safety upgrades for high schools, which would have been used to support the SRO officers in schools, cameras, and security features within the high schools. According to KPAX, the high school district general fund levy passed with 14,000 votes in favor and 13,000 against, roughly. The safety levy failed roughly 13,000 to 15,000 against. The elementary general fund levy passed with a wider margin of 10,000 votes in favor and 7,000 against. The voter turnout reached 34%, with 30,000 ballots cast out of the 88,000 registered voters for the county of Missoula. Those additional funds will continue to serve Missoula area kids and their teachers. Mind you, the legislation passed that $100 million Teachers Act called STARS Act, which will offer $41,615 as the base starting salary for teachers in the state of Montana. This is an effort to retain teachers in the state and stay competitive. And another story, the reforestation plans for Lolo are in full swing. So aside from the Lolo fires in 2014 and earlier, I think it was like probably, what was it, 2004, 2005? Or no, it actually was like just 2000 and the 2014. But regardless of that, they are also planting essentially they're planting 500,000 ponderosa trees with 24,000 ponderosa pine seeds to restore the lower slopes of Lolo Peak. The DNRC turned to American Forests, which focused on building partnerships to create healthy and resilient forests. On the ponderosa pine seedlings are planted this year. Montana Forest Consultants plan additional phases of restoration in subsequent years to restore the upper elevations of the western larch. It will also take a decade for the pine seeds to grow large enough to be visible from Highway 93 and start to obscure the ski runs where they tried to build the Maclay ski area. So this is just part of a bigger plan. The Clark Fork Motel is also in the news as the city looks to develop the site for veteran housing. You know, the Hero House, which started as a private partnership with the Poverello Center. The $1 million in federal grants were used to bolster housing during the pandemic, and one of those monies went to the veterans, where the city and Poverello Center purchased this property to be run by the Poverello Center. Development was expected to cost $3.7 million, with Missoula County in 2022 landed roughly $600,000 to help the project. And last week, Missoula City Council directed another $247,000 to the project from state grants. The city and county are also contributing $830,000 each to this project from the Old American Rescue Plan Act. This will be known as the Housing Montana's Hero Program. Nothing says Montana summers like drought, and we have members of small communities that were cut off from their water. So this is a big part of the Milk River project failure resulted in the 2024 irrigation water shortage for the Highline residents, Highline cities in Montana, according to Montana Free Press. This year, they plan on returning the Milk River to its original state. More than 18,000 Montanans rely on irrigation project for drinking water, for 140,000 acres of irrigated farmland along its canals. Farmers lost half the water necessary to make it through 2024 and face a similar rationing challenge this summer as they will leave tens of thousands of acres dry much of the season. Nelson is one of the 2 reservoirs that cannot recharge without water from the Milk River. Fresno Reservoir near Havre is one of the other reserve and by far the largest. Water rationed from the reservoirs have backstopped townships and irrigation for the next 11 months, but 54,000 acres of farmland between the two have gone unirrigated and will remain dry for the near future. Montana isn't new to the water game and lack thereof because the majority of our water systems are replenished through the Missouri and other rivers that pass through the state of Montana. Precipitation in Montana on average is 18 inches all year round, with the western parts getting more and the eastern parts likely to get 5 to 8 inches a year. Snowpack is a major contributor with roughly upwards of 300 inches from snowpack. However, with drier winters and many parts of Montana have been left dry, especially in the prairies, they are dealing with some major shortages and potential state of emergency in regards to drought. So the irrigation project failure has to do with a lot with the maintenance that is too much to justify many of the costs associated with the Milk River, as the federal government has committed roughly $52 million for repairs in the St. Mary siphon, another 18 million for the siphon at Hall's Coulee. However, those funds were cut off by the DOJ, the Trump administration, and now they are at a tipping point. So the entire stretch of the Milk River irrigation project is currently in moderate drought, which could worsen with a dry spring. And so if you read the article in Montana Free Press, this area basically encompasses a 340-mile area. So think about that in terms of the necessary need for this kind of irrigation project to expand that large swath of distance in Montana. So there's definitely a lot of stuff going on with that. I do have a little time for some events that are happening. You have your typical library events here at the library with Tiny Tales and Story Time, both Friday and Saturday at 10:30 a.m. We got watercolor and yarns, which is an event that happens weekly here at the Missoula Public Library every Friday at 12 noon. We have the genealogical study that's happening on Saturday at noon here at the Missoula Public Library. Missoula Food Bank is open Monday through Friday with abridged hours on Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 10 to 1, with longer hours on Thursday from 10 to about 6 p.m. for people who have economic challenges when getting food. And so there's a lot of things happening here. Just in general, Draftwork is doing a chisel and mallet woodworking thing happening this morning at around 9 a.m. You have your lunch at the Missoula Senior Center, $8 per plate for all ages at 11:30 a.m. It's a great resource for a lot of people in the community, besides the Poverello Center, which also offers food for the homeless. And there are many different resources in terms of food services in place. If you are a person with disabilities or know somebody with disabilities, All Abilities Art Club is a weekly event that happens every Friday at 1 p.m. at Base. Let's see, what else do I have? We have a couple other things happening tonight as well. Target Range Elementary School is hosting a kids night out. So parents who want to go out on a date night on Friday night, they're doing one of those nights as we get into the summer season, and parents and people who want to get out and about, and so these kind of things start rolling into place. Also, we have high school showcase at Free Cycle, so a bunch of high school bands are going to be performing tonight at 6:30 p.m. at Free Cycles. You guys can enjoy that. The University of Montana is hosting a dance coordination through the West Side Theater Group is coming down to the university to do some dance clinics and dance things this weekend as well. A dance performance at the Montana Theater. Also, the Montana Heroes House of the Veterans is doing a thing at 10 a.m. on Saturday at the Museum of Military History at the Fort Missoula area. So Heroes to At Home Barbecue and VSAP. They're trying to raise money for the Heroes House in Missoula and further with that. A lot of things happening. They have Little Dippers Trail Run at Pineview Park for little kids. And that about does it for my time. I don't have much time here, and I wanted to thank you guys for joining me this morning. And for Wake Up Missoula, I'm Scott Ramf.